Hello, Dark Friends. We wanted to take approximately 60 seconds to talk about a super cool small business that supports Watt spoilers. It's called Gypsy's Caravan Adventure Hostel. I feel like it's an element to traveling and living out of a backpack that most people never experience and don't even know exists. These little adventure hostels that are usually near the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail, and those are the ones that I'm familiar with, but they're obviously everywhere, all around some of these larger and beautiful parks, and not so large. Our friend and patron Kelsey is starting one of these adventure hostels, and I feel like one of the really big benefits to this kind of thing, and this kind of business, and the reason I always try to find them when I'm doing backpacking or canoeing, a canoeing trip or whatever, is that they're generally resources that people, like I said, often don't realize exist. Like, all you have to do is get there, and then you can pay the staff there, or sometimes work trade and stuff like that, so you can hang out at this place and sleep there and virtually live there. And during the day, you can take these trips out to climb a rock face or get a guided tour to do summit some mountain.
And let's be honest, I'm terrible at vacations, right? What am I going to do? I want to go someplace I've never been before and go on an amazing hike without worrying about whether or not I have all the right supplies. And I think that the fact that I could go out there and just have someone tell me, this is the best place, this is what you want to do, this is what you need, I could go have fun and relax on a vacation in a place I've never been before.
Yeah, and especially for somebody like me, which I'm actually considering it. But, it's run by a friend of ours. But also, I've never really done almost any backpacking in Canada, which is a shame because I live not so terribly far from the border. These trips are tailored for the beginner adventurer. So if you've never paddled or hiked or camped before, you don't have anything to worry about, these trips are aimed at getting you comfortable in the outdoors and learn how to do activities properly and safely. Prices and contact info can be found at the website www.gypsycaravanah.com. That's www.gypsycaravanah.com. gypsiescaravanah.com. Is that a typo?
No, it's not. It's Canadian. Gypsy Caravan, eh?
Seriously? Or are you being
That's
funny?
the only explanation I can come up with. Welcome to the Gypsy Caravan, eh?
Gypsy's Caravan, eh? Oh, Gypsy's Caravan Adventure Hostel. Fuel your soul with adventure. So, if having an awesome time in the outdoors sounds fun to you, do yourself a favor, check out their website. There's a link in this episode's description.
And maybe check them out on Instagram, too.
At Gypsy's Caravan AH for Adventure Hostel, if you'd like to check them out on Twitter or Instagram.
Kelsey's wonderful, and I would pay a lot of money to spend a day with her, so you should too.
I totally would. I guess I need a passport. I don't have a passport.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You can use mine.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
All right, so I want to introduce this episode. This is going to be part 2 of a 2-part series where we look at the visions in chapter 25 and 26. And as we're going backwards, we are currently dipping into the end of chapter 25 and starting off about halfway through the visions and going forward in time and back in the book. Forward and back.
Forward and back. We're introduced to a character named Lewin here, who is the grandson of Adon. Am I getting that right?
Oh yeah, grandson.
Grandson of Aidan. Correct. And Joradam's father.
Who was the person who had the last vision. Yep.
Yeah, and I estimate approximately 15 years further more recently.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Based on age again, I think.
Nodding.
it's an unknown location, but I'd guess based on the weather that it's somewhere to the south and east at this point, but I'm shrugging. What do you guys think?
It's looking more and more like the waste, like maybe they're somewhere around the spine of the world, but wait, is this the snowy place?
What I think is going on is this is still west of the spine of the dragon. They haven't crossed yet.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Because they're planning on doing it. But everything is so destroyed by the breaking that there's really no water anywhere.
Right.
Yes.
So the land hasn't settled. We're talking Dust Bowl era in the US. Like, there's, wind is whipping up. There's just no water anywhere. There's probably volcanoes all over the place. Shocking that we don't have a bit of which is what we do. We have a sun that's not very bright because there's so much ash in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're all wearing dust veils, which creates the tradition of Aiel veiling themselves when fighting.
Yeah, I didn't really pick up on that too much, but yeah, night was only a small relief from the dry, blistering sun. And he says, trading the dull, fiery red sun for freezing cold.
Yeah. It's the earliest reference to water being the most valuable commodity as well. So, from here on, like, water oaths and fighting over drops, small amounts of water comes from this time, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, that definitely also happens because of the waste, but it seems like the tradition of having all those water oaths is actually from before, when water was scarce everywhere, not just in the waste.
Which we see in Roderick's vision. I think they we'll start talking more about the water oaths, I think.
Yeah, that one's super important for the water tradition. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
But we're definitely post-breaking and natural disaster everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes. So we get the introduction of the veil, but they never really link it to why they still use it or wear it when they fight. There's never really that continuation of the link.
Oh, there's, I think, a double thing happening there, where at first it starts out as a dust veil, and so later they'll have these veils on, and then when, it's in this chapter.
Yes.
I think.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
When one of the Dashane Aiel or several of them kill people, one of them tries to speak to his mother, and his mother says, like, I don't know you. You have my son's face, but... And he covers his face.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I thought that was, like, very much the moment where the tradition started.
Yeah, this
totally
is definitely the origin of the Aiel face veiling before killing, for sure.
This vision is the betrayal.
Yes.
Right? This is where the Aiel give up the way of the leaf and go from the Jenn Aiel to just the Aiel. I think this one stands out as the tragedy. Despite everything else that happens, all the death, all the loss, all the horrible things that happen to the Aiel on their journey, it's this one that's the tragedy.
Yeah.
You said we're saying something like that in the last one, and I hear what you're saying. I think the Aiel very much see it as a tragedy, but I wonder if these people would have even survived if they just continued to refuse to defend themselves and have their women stolen and sold like property and murdered indiscriminately. It would have been hard to survive several thousand more years.
See, that's where I disagree with you. I think the drain of the Jenn into the Aiel is what caused the death of the Aiel.
Yeah.
What do you mean? The Aiel are alive.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
But the Jenn disappeared, and they disappeared into the Aiel.
Yes.
And I think that if the Jenn had all continued to follow the way of the leaf, they would have survived.
It's hard to tell. Yeah, it's hard to say because we'll call them the birth of the modern tent-dwelling Aiel here.
Sure.
They become the self-appointed protectors of the Jenn who, at least for the next couple of generations, refuse to acknowledge their existence. And you've got to wonder whether they would have survived if not for that protection. But you're right in that over that time, a lot of the Jenn bled out and joined the tent dwellers.
Well, all of these original men that got cast out, they go on to marry and have kids, so there must have been people that, men and women both, who would have moved across over to them.
Yeah, and they end up being self-sustaining, and we see that with the first Maiden of the Spear, actually. So, yeah.
Right. And there have been women who have stayed in the tents before her. She was just the first one who picked up the spear to fight.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it's hard to say whether or not the split killed the Jenn or protected them. I don't know. I'm on the fence with that one, actually, so...
I mean, you might say that either path would have destroyed the Jenn.
I think they were destined to.
Maybe the point I'm making also is destroyed the culture of the Jenn. The Jenn weren't killed. They're not destroyed. The Jenn are alive. They're just no longer the true dedicated. They're no longer the Jenn, which is a title, not a race. It's not a race or an ethnicity. It's an idea.
Right. And you would say maybe the Jenn live on in the Tinkers, in ideals, and blood in the Aiel.
Yes, that's accurate, I think.
Yeah, I like that.
And in Nakomi.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Inexplicably preserved one.
She's Jenn. She has to be Jenn. Like, reading her scene, she's Jenn. Like, just 100%.
I was wondering before, I think it might have been Nick talking, but like at the very beginning, you said you had a theory, I think, while we were talking about Nakomi. Is it that one of these Aes Sedai never died?
I thought maybe reading through that some of the ancient Aes Sedai that we see in that vision when they're talking about creating the Eye of the World and semesters there, that at least one of those are the same that we see in the most recent vision.
I was trying to match up the names, and I couldn't find any names in common. I wanted to say the same thing, but I couldn't verify it.
I know. They don't give a name in that recent vision. They just describe her dark eyes. And so I guess we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to that point, but that was
feasible.
Yeah,
and I feel like RJ goes to great lengths to say, like, the group is old, but there's one in particular who's, like, ancient.
Yeah, and she's dark eyes, and that's a point that's made in the earlier vision and with that one. And so it's probably one of those things that he throws down to kind of make us think, but I don't know. I thought that maybe I would love for that to be the same person, because she's the one who has the vision, so...
But I thought there was too much of a time gap for even the longest-lived Aes Sedai to survive that long.
It's a couple of 100 years, and she was already, a fully fledged Aes Sedai at the time, so I know. Yes, and Margot's making a good point here, which we'll get to, about the ageless faces.
Yes. I
whether or
wanted to
not,
make a point about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll wait and get to that one. I know, I had thoughts and questions about that, so... I thought that it was kind of cute that they suck at stalking here.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, you're really bad at it right now. Yeah.
Because the other Aiel makes such a point of, like, being, like, arrogant about it and being,
Exactly.
like, able to disappear into everything and, like, mocking people who can't walk. And then here's their ancestors being like, I can't not step on a twig.
I know.
So in this scene, Luwin is looking out over... Essentially, there's the, like, carrying or, like, water bags of a group of little girls who had apparently been sent out to, like, go collect water or whatever. Were walking away from the group somewhere, and they've disappeared. Their bags are on the ground. So these couple of Aiel know that they're missing. And Luwin approaches some of his friends, presumably, or allies, whatever, and says, like, listen, we're going to go sneak into the camp and try to steal them back.
Pretty brave, isn't it? Like, I don't know whether it's alluded to that these are the first group to, not even getting to violence, but to try and take people back, or whether usually people just, like, let them go. I mean, it's implied that their older generation were just happy to, like, live and let live, and, what's happened's happened, but do you think these...
Yeah.
You might also say... dumb teenagers doing
Well, yes.
stupid things they probably shouldn't be doing.
Well, they didn't think it out very well, did they? They just thought they could sneak in and sneak out, and they had no intention of doing any violence, and they just didn't think it through.
They're terrible sneakers, and they think they can sneak in and out. And it's just, and be heroes. And, like, they have no foresight whatsoever. Like, they're not planning to become great warriors. They're just forced into a position where that's their only option.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they really have no reason to know what they're doing. They haven't been raised with it. They've been sheltered their entire lives. There's no reason why they would know what to do.
Yeah.
So it's very innocent. I see this vision as very, very innocent. Innocence lost.
Yeah, beginner's luck. You know, I mean, these are people who haven't had violence in their history. They've seen violence, but genetically, it's almost seems to have been bred out of them.
Totally. Although we did see in some of the earlier visions some of these like tremblings of like getting really angry but tamping it down and that kind of thing. But so far they've managed to like keep it together.
So maybe it is just culture.
I think it's more culture more than genetics. Yeah, for sure. They're just that tradition and what is it like tradition is strong as culture or something like that. They're just no, we can't do that. That's not the sort of thing that we do as a people. So I'm angry right now, but I'm gonna bury that shit deep. And then now we can see it, you know, desperate times and desperate measures kind of thing.
Oh, I like the point Aradia makes that these early proto-tinkers still eat meat, but modern tinkers are vegetarians.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Well, I reckon they would have had to eat their horses.
Yeah, quite possibly. That's true. Modern tinkers, it's like they kind of went more into that philosophy. Yeah.
They went to extremes. They became extremists.
Careful what you say. Shout out to Aradia. I'm also veggie, so fist bump over the internet. Woo.
Arita, you're a vegetarian?
Oh, you're not? Oh, sorry, I thought so. Never mind.
I consider myself a freeivore.
Oh, what?
I'll eat food if it's free.
Oh.
Ah.
Yeah.
A freegan, thank you. Yes, snakes and fox. That's
freegan.
A better term.
I thought
freegan
meant a vegan that only eats fruit that's already dropped from the tree. A freegan vegan.
I always had the idea that it's like the most hardcore. They're like you eat out of dumpsters and things that are like already.
Oh, I've seen those TV shows.
Yeah.
You don't produce food. You merely subsist off the leavings of our society in order to not create.
It can be done.
More waste.
To be fair, that's kind of disgusting, but I get it. I absolutely get it.
It's noble. It's absolutely noble.
Totally. Yeah. I absolutely get it.
When you see images of, so most recently we had a needle in the strawberry scare, and we had truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of strawberries just dumped, just because one needle was found in one strawberry. And this happens to fruit all the time because it's not right, it's not the right shape, or...
Well, I don't know if you guys have heard us talk about imperfect produce that I did for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a great idea.
So they do that at Woolies here.
Yeah, Woolies had to be shamed into it, though.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't have just done it out of the goodness of their hearts. It was because people were becoming more and more aware of the food waste issue, and when you got bananas that are not put through shopping centres because they're not exactly bendy enough, or not exactly straight enough, or not exactly the right size, and then tens of thousands of kilos of it just got chucked out. And carrots, it's like, come on. Anyway.
Carrots was the big one.
That's a side rant, but...
Back to it.
So guys, 4 girls were kidnapped.
Yes. Exactly. Raped and drugged, for sure.
Drugged? Do you think drugged as well?
I don't know about drugged.
I don't think drugged.
Shock.
Well,
absolutely.
I thought that they had so symptoms of, you know, it's definitely...
Oh, one seemed to be,
PTSD.
but I thought she was just, in
just
shock.
Possibly drunk is my only thought, but mostly I just think that they've been raped non-stop for 24 hours.
Oof.
Yeah, probably.
It's gross. And it has to be said, this scene felt a lot like Deliverance, don't you think?
Ooh.
Like, that whole, like, I'm gonna carve you like a pig, boy.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oof. I went and watched that scene, actually, when I was doing this chapter, and I was like, ugh, I gotta take a break. So, just to kind of...
I love that classic villain line, enjoying his slow advance.
Yeah, I know. He's so bad guy.
So
I'm gonna gut you like a pig. Man, Jordan must have been watching some TV that afternoon.
Totally.
the 4 Aiel men trip and fall into the camp and find the girls, start waking them up, and then Deliverance guy wakes up and starts pointing at this huge knife at them and literally says, I'm going to gut you like a pig.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think he really could have totally killed these boys but like the reputation of the Aiel is they're totally nonviolent. He wasn't expecting them to fight back in the slightest.
Yeah, it's like, what are you going to do? Run? And he doesn't run, and he makes fun of him for not even doing that.
Right. Like, the second they fight back, these guys are taken so off what's really cute and fluffy and can't fight back, suddenly, bursting into a ball of teeth and nails. It's like the cute kitten that scratches you,
Absolutely. That chihuahua that bites you on the foot.
Monty Python bunny.
Yes. Yeah. Run away! It's an Aiel! Ah! It's got big spears!
What do you think was the first killing blow?
The cast iron, of course.
Right. Yeah. Good. I thought so. Yeah. So it wasn't even an actual weapon, was it? It was like a weaponized cookpot that crushes the temple of the bald guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the teapot, the cast iron teapot. Kettle,
represent cast iron life.
Sticking with it. And then as the Aiel are attacked, they scramble to defend themselves and are just very, very lucky that everything they do seems to work, and only one of them dies. And the I think it was 4 captors of the 4 girls, the 4 young girls are all dead.
I think were there 2 girls?
I thought there was 2.
I think there were 2.
Oh, was it 2?
Unless
4 captors, 2 girls.
Oh, yep, I just read this whole chapter wrong. There are 4, Lewin whispered, and I just made all kinds of assumptions.
4 brains, right?
We'll see.
3. There's 2 in Australia and 1 on this side.
I'll be fair.
Half a brain each.
That's why this works so well. Between the 2 of us, me and Patrick have like 1 whole brain. Oh yeah, and Discord, which is like another like half brain.
That's the other person that does this podcast with us.
Yeah.
I think 20 brains.
20 people in Discord.
Yeah, so with the cookpot, not necessarily, it wasn't used as a weapon, or for the purpose of being a weapon.
No.
And same with the spears being collected at the end. They didn't leave, after killing those 4 people, they didn't leave there going, okay, we're going to start defending ourselves now. They left because they left the swords behind, and they only collected the spears because, it was...
They're tools.
It's a tool.
They had metal in it.
They were, and they were short of tools. And they were going back thinking, okay, we've saved the girls, we've rescued them, we're going to be welcomed back in, and it wasn't at all. And so it wasn't until they were then turned away is when it changed, when they decided to take up violence.
Exactly. And
I like that interpretation, that it's the rejection of their people that causes them to take up violence.
Yes.
Not
the
violence themselves.
Yeah.
And they think of themselves, I think it's a good point. I think even at the beginning of the Aiel as warriors, they tried to create compatibility between killing and the way. These groups still see themselves as Daishan, but it doesn't last. We know it doesn't really work.
Well, and this quote takes me back to Perrin and the hammer versus the axe, because he rejects the axe for the same reason the Aiel reject the sword. It is only used for killing and nothing else. And that brings us back to Perrin and the Tinkers as one offshoot of the Aiel, and Rand and the Aiel as another offshoot of the Aiel. And I love that parallel.
Never really thought about it that way.
Does Perrin ever know?
I don't think so.
It's interesting, actually.
I just put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, because
Not many people do, other than Rand, the Aiel. Yeah, geez.
Like, does he understand why there's a brotherless? Or does he just say, oh, you're just brotherless now, I'm not going to try to understand the Aiel? I mean, Perrin's perspective now. He obviously gets them on side.
I think he understands, but at one point he does state that, like, he's like, I get that they're brotherless and they weren't Shido, but they were with the Shido, and that's enough.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's like, he just doesn't have sympathy. He's like, they've been aiding my enemies. They've abducted my people.
Yeah.
There is no forgiveness. Even if they were kind to Fail while she was captured, that doesn't redeem the act of taking her prisoner.
Yeah.
And he condemns them without a second thought.
He can't see anything else at that point anyway, I suppose. But I was just curious to understand whether or not he ever got a history of the Aiel. Ever got that connection. Or whether if he did, he'd even care. Because
he doesn't really take the time to really understand the Aiel culture through Gaul, but I feel like he absorbs a fair amount.
That's because he's busy looking for his wife.
True. True. He's very blinded at that time.
And he even says he has a one-track mind.
And I do think that Lewin ended up picking up the spear by accident or providence is sort of like that typical scramble back, grab whatever's around, poke it forward. It's actually kind of like, random thought, you know, in Eye of the World when Ran kills Narg? Yeah, It's like, he's already carrying the sword at that point, though it's different, but he's like an accidental stab through the chest.
Yeah.
And then there's blood everywhere, and you accidentally killed your first Trolloc. So, I don't know if that means anything, but that was, I just thought of that now, so.
I think it's just it is a very similar feeling scene where you have this kind of...
Starts off with a cook pot first, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah. It's true, it does.
Yeah.
In the farmhouse.
Yeah, so it's just this idea that somebody's coming for me, take whatever's in my hand and push it towards them in order to protect myself. Yeah. And if it's something sharp and pointy, you may kill that person.
The Aielmen go and rescue the 2 young girls from the 4 deliverance guys and come back, return the girls, and...
I love that we've called these the deliverance guys now.
Forever. It's branded.
Forever.
That's it.
Yeah. I'm glad I gave that to you guys.
The women rushed to their daughters with comforting arms and soft murmurs. Colleen sank into her mother's embrace with a welcoming sigh. My gran hardly appeared to notice Saralyn, who looked close to tears at the bruises on her daughter's face. Adon frowned at the young men, permanent creases of worry deepening in his face. In the name of a light, what happened? When we found you were gone, too. He trailed off when he saw the stretcher holding Charlin. What happened? He asked again, as if dreading the answer. Lewin opened his mouth slowly, but my gran spoke first. They killed them. She was staring at something in the distance, her voice as simple as a child. The bad men heard us. Then Lewin came and killed them. You must not say things like that, child, Saralyn said, soothingly. She stopped, peering into her daughter's eyes, then turned uncertainly at Lewin. Is it true? We had to, Elijah said in a pained voice. They tried to kill us. They did kill Charlin. Adon stepped back. You killed? Killed men? What of the Covenant? We harmed no one. No one. There's no reason good enough to justify killing another human being. None. They took my great father, Lewin said. They took my gran and Colleen and hurt them. There is no reason, Adon roared, shaking with rage. We must accept what comes. Our sufferings are sent to test our faithfulness. We accept and endure. We do not murder. You have not strayed from the way. You have abandoned it. You are Deshane no longer. You are corrupt, and I will not have the Aiel corrupted by you. Leave us, strangers, killers. You are not welcome in the wagons of the Aiel. He turned his back and strode away as if they no longer existed. Saralyn and Nareen started after him, guiding the girls. Mother? Lewin said, and flinched when she looked back at him with cold eyes. Mother, please. Who are you that addresses me so? Hide your face from me, stranger. I had a son, once, with a face like that. I do not wish to see it on a killer. And she led my grain after her, after the others. I am still Aiel, Lewin shouted, but when they did not look back, he thought he heard Luca crying. The wind rose, picking up dust, and he veiled his face. I am Aiel.
And that, to me, is the foundation of the modern Aiel.
Dark.
Yeah. So brutal.
I also wanted to mention the Covenant versus the Ark of the Covenant, just while I'm bringing up parallels, the Aiel and the Jewish people.
Yeah.
Their way of communicating with God.
Mm-hmm. And the Covenant with the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Their way of... It's not exactly communication, but it's their oath to the Aes Sedai.
It's their higher power.
Yeah, it's their link to them. And they basically treat them like... I mean, I don't want to say like gods, but demigods, or it's their reason for being and all of this kind of thing. So, yeah, I get that.
They do treat them like gods, yeah. I would, the Greek gods, multi-god, but yeah. Infallible, I think, is the right way. The Aiel see Aes Sedai as infallible until they get to know them. And then they realize they're idiot women.
Like, Egwene
they're human beings,
for that.
yeah.
Yes. Idiot people, I should say.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Aidan at the beginning of that read-in was about to say that they'd given up on the boys as well. He was like, oh, I thought you were... And then he stops. Like as in, he'd given up on them. Because he was never going to go back after them.
Well, because if they went into that place, they were going to get killed. Because, if they're following the way of the leaf, there is no alternative.
That's right. And he's so mad, and I think he reacts so strongly, not only because this is the second breakaway, but also because of violence, but Aidan is the one who witnessed all of his children and wife be taken by raiders during his own life, and he was the one to keep what he sees as the Aiel on track when the Tuatha'an split apart, which is what we just read through. So I think it affects him that much more personally, and he just completely loses it because he's got that those experiences in his own life as well, rather than it just being about the violence. He just completely... and also different to the Tuatha'an, the actor split was not a choice made by Lewin and his mates, but rather they were deliberately cast out. It's like, I think that's significant, and it's like the pattern was forcing the Aiel to continue to split, and it's horribly brutal, so...
Well, it needed 3 sects.
It needed to happen.
The true, the lost, and the killers.
I kind of saw them as like they were sacrificing themselves or their identity in order to protect the others so that they can continue on and the Aiel as a people can be preserved.
Yeah, I always feel I have a difficult time reading about this because it's very difficult for me to imagine turning the other cheek, I guess. Like, can you imagine watching your family members be kidnapped and just like, what, just shrug?
Yeah, I know.
I can't do nothing.
No.
If that's, what's necessary is what.
But I've talked about this before, but I feel very strongly that I try and follow the way of the leaf in my life. Like, I don't believe in violence. I don't think it solves anything. I think it just leads to more violence. And we don't have Trollocs. We don't have, in the real world, we do not have unthinking, uncaring beings. And so anytime you do violence, all you're doing is giving the person you're doing violence to more fuel to come back at you. Not to mention making yourself worse.
Do you just wait and watch while someone stabs you? Nothing?
You at least try to talk, even if your first action isn't to stab the other person in the face or whatever.
Well, sure, and surely I'm not saying that my reaction is to like immediately stab someone. You know what I mean?
No, I didn't mean that, but that the first reaction should be to do something. I agree with you, even if it's just talking them down, like intervening somehow.
You don't do nothing. Like, I've never said that, but violence doesn't help. There are lots of things to do short of violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I feel like there's a difference between there's a different interpretation of the way of the leaf, as we can talk about all the different levels. There's take no action, right? Just let yourself exist in the world. Then you can say, well, I'm going to take action, but I'm not going to do any violence. And then you can say, I'm going to do violence, but only to protect myself, or only with tools as opposed to with weapons. So there's all of these different levels that these different characters end up at.
Yeah.
I believe.
And then we get to there were only Aiel, Jenn, and enemies.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
It is like that downward slope. This is the third from last. There are 9 in total, so.
Oh, this is the winter sequence where they're like living, and they seem used to it, living in the snow somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. This is what I would say during the breaking.
I think the breaking's been happening for the last couple of visions.
Yeah.
And so this is the first generation of Aiel as we know them, approximately 20 years later than Lewin's POV.
Right.
Because Jordan is about 18 years old here. His father is Lewin.
Okay.
And they were the generation that were forced to the tents, as they were the ones abandoned from the wagons, as we just saw. So that's how I placed it.
So this group of Aiel have been following the Jenn around, protecting them. There are still far more Jenn than there are Aiel, because it irritated him that there were so many more Jenn than Aiel.
Yeah, he made a point of that, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
We see in Jordan's narration that he knows that winter should have been over a long time ago, and the old people say that winter used to go away, but he has trouble believing it. But also, they also say these crazy stories that the earth used to shake and mountains rose and sank like water in a summer pond and all this stuff. And Jordan did not believe it. He was 18, born in the tents, and this was the only life he had ever known. The snow, the tents, and the duty to protect.
So this kind of places it after the breaking then, like it's sort of settled now.
It seems like things are settling down, but they're either at a high elevation or I don't know where they are. But somewhere in the snow.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe they're heading south now, but it's really unknown, like you say. And we do, like you were just saying, we do see that in the passage of a generation, the weather has changed to a long winter, so...
Maybe living on the dragon wall somewhere?
That's what I was thinking.
Maybe.
It is hard to tell. I mean, the weather could be, it's just still dealing with
It could be part
ash
of the breaking.
and winter.
Oh,
basically, what you have is ash in the air, and you end up with I'd call it a nuclear winter, but it's not nuclear, it's volcanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
Hey, I mean, the second greatest in the city in the world is just a sheet of glass now, right?
And I mean, if we're talking about parallels between Tarmangeddon and Armageddon, and I mean the parallels to a nuclear disaster with the tainting of the true power and the breaking of the world, like it makes sense to have a nuclear winter afterwards.
Sure. And then we see Jordan being approached by some members of the Jenn Aiel, who will rarely go into the other Aiel's camp. Or the cast out ones.
Former Jenn.
Soon to be former.
Soon to be former Jenn, yeah.
Say if one of them doesn't join the, what do we call them? The spear Aiel?
The tent Aiel?
The
tent
Aiel. Yeah, it seems like this group have come for the help. So it says for the help they could not find elsewhere, and there's an implication that this has happened pretty frequently over the last 18 years or so, as the Jenn converted gradually.
The drain from the Jenn into the tent Aiel, like there's this some of them do die, but at this point I would assume most of them get protected, so it's not like they're not having kids, and it's not like they're being slaughtered. It really does seem to be that they're just deciding to fight. I mean, some of them are certainly being abducted and killed, because as we see.
So as we talk through these visions as well, is this the first time that they're actually referred to as the Jenn Aiel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is Jenn? Does Jenn directly translate to true?
True. Yeah, the true Aiel. Yeah. Because these folks have betrayed the Aiel, and so there's this sort of mocking. It's basically like, well, you're not Aiel, you're the Jenn Aiel. You think you're just better than us because you're the true Aiel. Well, you know what? Too bad. We're going to take that and throw it in your face.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how I read it.
So, they were given the new Aiel, the tent Aiel, gave that name to the Jenn, and the Jenn in turn refused to acknowledge the existence of the tent Aiel. Apart from these groups that came every now and again to convert or ask for help and not convert.
Which is, I think, what ended up happening to all of the Jenn Aiel.
Yeah.
Except, perhaps, for Nakomi.
It's also interesting that next they say, you've given up the way, and it's interesting over such a short time, the meaning of the way has drastically changed. I mean, what did we say, 20 years or so? And he's saying, no, well, to him the way is... He's like, no, that's not true. I've never held a sword, and it's just how much the meaning has lost over such a short time.
Yeah, So it was probably 35 to 40 years previously that the split to the Tuatha'an occurred. So not that
just
long.
a generation.
Yeah.
And only how long since the knight Lewin killed a man? Was it roughly 20 years?
About 20 years, yeah. Yep. Because Lewin is in this vision. He's an older man now, so he's still that first generation. Well, Jordan is the first generation born to the tents.
It kind of seems like Lewin he's told his own telling of the story to the tent Aiel, and they've accepted that the way is things like not carrying a sword and the duty to protect and things of this nature. Because it doesn't seem like this Jordan knows what the Jenn are talking about.
No.
I do think that Ji'ito is the result of the way of the leaf being corrupted, changed, reused.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it
think
corrupted. I think it's just developed.
I think it's just
They're
that
developed.
strong sense of, that's where, the strong sense of oaths and honor has developed from and turned into Ji'ito.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Absolutely.
Nodding.
Yeah. But we never see Ji'ito ever mentioned in any of these visions. That's something that
That's a
arose
modern-
afterwards.
Yeah.
No.
We see Jordan approached by this small group of Jenn Aiel who say that they went down to a village to trade a place with a log wall, and the men from the village had come back in the night, taking what had been traded for and more. Plus, there are many dead. So they not only took all the things back, but they indiscriminately killed, apparently, because the Jenn Aiel don't even resist.
Yeah, they must have either killed, or maybe the Jenn Aiel were just like standing in the way.
And there's not even a really complete list, maybe.
No.
Fathers, first brothers, a mother, and then many captives as well. First sisters, a sister mother, a daughter. And Lewin simply says, who is Jordan's father? We'll bring them back. But also, and this is important, you may stay with us as you wish, so long as you're willing to defend yourselves and the rest of us. If you stay, you'll never be allowed back among the wagons.
And that's the important distinction.
Those who
Right.
wish, if you want to come with us to save your family, you can take a spear, but remember, you'll never be able to go back. You're one of us after that.
You're dead
Yeah.
to the Jenn. Either by killing or being killed. Either way, you're dead to the Jenn.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the dead man has my face. Which, again, we talk to when we go back to the ceremony that sent the people down into Rhuidean. They say, these are the dead. I can't hear the dead talk.
Yes, absolutely.
And so there's that mirror of the Jenn shunning the Aiel as dead, and then the Aiel in turn shunning people who go to Rhuidean, the land of the Jenn, as belonging to the dead.
This part coming up too answers our question from before, where Lewin says, you don't have to take a spear to stay with us. Like, you can stay with us and not fight. That's also an option.
But this badass mama is like, no, I'm fighting.
I'm going to get my
I'm
daughter.
getting one of those spears and I'm going after my kids. So do not
me it
stand
now.
in my way. Yeah.
Yes.
Give it to me. Do not stop me. And this is the foundation of the Maidens of the Spear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is the OG Maiden. I like that.
Yeah. Do you think Morin and Jordan ever get together? Because he was checking her out.
I think they do.
Yeah. Well, she has a vision of him.
He does. She
Oh,
does, yeah.
Yeah.
She was like, I saw you in a
I've seen
dream,
you,
and she
yeah.
smiles at him.
And she might be one of the OG wise ones.
I agree. And this sort of
She's a dreamer.
is credited as being the beginning of the self-sustaining Camp Aiel. They,
Yes.
from this point, they begin making babies with one another instead of needing,
Outsiders.
fresh blood.
Converts.
If you like.
Gen.
Yeah, converts. Yeah.
Jordan does say there are 200 in the Sept at this point, although they're still tiny in comparison to the Gen.
Right. So, I mean, in 20 years, that's not much growth. Even though the culture has totally changed within those 200 people, it's still a very small portion of
Basically,
the Aiel.
10 a year have come over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to show her, like, all right, well, if you're coming with me, you've got to learn how to use this spear. And he notices that the long end of it becomes tangled in her skirt, so he cuts it off.
Right.
And he starts showing her how to use this short spear.
He's like, first of all, put on some pants. Second of all, you can do this for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he starts realizing, hey, if this spear is cut off, the haft works really well, and the spear works really well, essentially, as a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says he thinks he could move it faster than a sword.
So it's 4 foot, isn't it? It's the evolution of the 4-foot spear. That's how I counted it. So we've got
Right.
3 feet of haft and 1 foot of steel tip, which is
Right.
basically a long sword, right?
It's exactly like a longsword. Right, the ratio is slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you've got a foot, there's maybe
It's
a 2-foot
a
difference.
longsword's
but-
basically the exact opposite. You're going to have a foot of handle and 3 feet of steel.
The Aiel are going from spears to swords.
Yeah, accidentally.
Yeah.
In all but name.
Yeah, it's technically not a sword, so...
Right, so... But this is no longer a hunting weapon, right?
No.
A short-hafted spear is not something you can throw at prey. It's something that you use to fight men.
You could throw a javelin.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long is a regular javelin?
I mean, it's throwing, but like you've lost a lot by cutting off the haft. It's really now designed as a fighting weapon.
It's now just symbolic that it's a spear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The symbol's super important to these people as well. Yeah.
And now you get the buckler and the spear because you no longer have the long haft for blocking. So he's like, oh, I'll find something. Well, that's the source of the buckler that becomes part of the Aiel uniform. And then she looks at him and says, I saw your face in a dream, she said softly.
Yep.
You'll make a good father.
Yep.
Wink.
So,
there it is.
Yep. So I don't think there's any question in terms of what happens after that point. There's some... Yeah.
He never had a chance.
No, he didn't get to make that decision. But in the meantime, he's figuring out how to use the spear as a sword and conquer the world and become the most badass brace on Randland.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a big step forward for them as a military culture, for sure.
Totally. We always say technology rules armies, right? Like, if you have better technology, you win battles. And that short spear is a hell of a technology.
Yeah, we're on to Roderick now.
His name was Roderick, and he was nearly 20.
So this is Geodam's grandson?
Yeah, that's what I had, yeah. And
so we're 2 generations later.
yeah, it's approximately 40 years later than what we saw with Jordan, I thought, considering maybe a little more, considering that it's 2 generations.
I can give you that.
Oh, and here, Roderick doesn't recognize he doesn't understand what snow is, and he's trying to conceptualize it. He looks up at a mountain, and he's like, maybe that's snow up there.
Very different from the last vision where we saw them in permasnow.
Yeah, which is where his grandfather lived.
So we know the climate must be changing vastly, rapidly, because of the breaking, even though the land is settled.
Well, yeah, just because the land isn't heaving anymore doesn't mean the weather is going to obey that settling as quickly. It would take a lot longer for the climate to calm down after that much time, so makes sense.
Yeah, also, Roderick's only 20, but at the end of that paragraph, it says, he remembered when the world was green, to sum it up. So just in his lifetime, in his short lifetime, some drastic changes happened again. I imagine it's climate.
Yeah, because, so his grandfather, it was snowy, and then we don't see his father's generation. But I imagined anyway, that it was long winter, which would leave a lot of moisture in the soil, and then you'd have maybe like some kind of spring, and then this long summer.
And that spring would be nothing but mud.
Yeah.
And landslides, and all these new mountains having all of this water coursing off of them would just cause more destruction and damage.
And the groundwater, which is important for this scene, potentially.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And a little bit of grass, so you'd like to think there was some plants growing.
Nothing's stable. Still no place of safety.
Yeah,
No.
that's it.
They're close. They're getting close.
Yeah.
And it's important to mention that where they are is around the southeast corner of Randland, or still not across the Dragon Wall yet, in what will become modern Kyrian,
Yeah.
near to
Yes.
Dragon Wall. Yeah. So
Yeah, so I was wondering about that. Are they, when they're talking to, what's that guy's name, like Garan or something?
That's right.
Are they actually at Kyrian right now? Is that the future side of Kyrian? Because Graham is saying, his dad's got a nice Aes Sedai advisor who's saying you need to go east and build this awesome city. So is that city she's talking about, is that Kyrian, or is she trying to encourage them to go help build Rhuidean?
I believe Kyrian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Kyrian as well.
She says a city near a big river.
Yeah.
Which is the Alguenya?
So it just must mean that they must be west. They're not actually at the future side of Karian, right?
Yeah, they're not quite there yet.
No,
but
not yet.
but they're going to move west. They're going to move east, and then the Aiel are going to keep going over the Dragon Wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this sharing of water is what leads to the sharing of Endeladora. And then, of course, that leads to Layman's Sin, which leads to the Aiel War, which leads to Rand's birth.
Mm-hmm.
And we could say that about all of these visions, is all of this is leading up to Rand, right? All of this has happened so that Rand can be born of a maiden wed to no man on the Dragon Mount.
Such a long game. Agreed.
Yeah.
Aurelia.
That's one way
Fucking
to say it.
Ta'veren. Literally hundreds of years.
And you thought Arthur Hawkwing was a strong Ta'veren. Rand was fucking things up 3,000 years
Yep.
with his Ta'verenness.
So yeah, like you said, this is sort of referring to the water sharing oath. And at some stage in the last 20 years, the Jenn acquired 4 Aes Sedai. And Roderick knows of them, and knows that there are only 4, not a couple of dozen, like Garam seems to believe. Probably has never met them.
That's interesting. At first I wondered where these Aes Sedai came from. Now I'm thinking that these Aes Sedai just ran into and they were like, oh my god, the Aiel are still around, and stuck with them.
Well, and at this point, I believe the tower has been founded, and these Aes Sedai have sworn the oaths.
Yes.
Yes.
Because they've got the Aes Sedai faces. So these are the new, in quotes, Aes Sedai. These are the post-AOL Aes Sedai.
I don't have this up right now, but I think the tower was founded 300 years after the breaking, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're past that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Or, could have happened recently, but still.
And we see some of these Aes Sedai having in the next vision. So, I mean, it's hard to really know at this point because we don't actually see the Aes Sedai, but at least in the next vision, they have the ageless face.
They do. Mm-hmm.
Which means they must be younger than 300 years.
Yeah.
How's Garam just like, do you know what, let's just get together and fucking kill them. Let's get rid of them.
I know. There's this...
The first Amerlin seat was elected 98 years after the breaking. So they've been doing stuff.
Well, even if the White Tower itself wasn't founded, it's not to say that the Aes Sedai weren't getting together.
And the oaths were definitely introduced quite a bit after the White Tower was founded.
Wiki says the White Tower was finished being built in 202 after breaking. So these women could very well be from the White Tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe they are. He talks about having an Aes Sedai advisor, and we know that's a tradition that's moved forward into modern times.
Trav makes a good point. 98 years after breaking doesn't necessarily mean 98 years after the beginning of the breaking.
Yeah.
The breaking took a very long time.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
do we know when the AB
No.
notoriety...
That's part of the
Yeah.
built-in... I've spent some time looking into it. Nobody knows is the idea. That everything was so messed up for so long that nobody actually knows what year it is.
That's part of the breaking, is there's just a little bit of built-in plot protection.
Yeah.
Records lost.
Snakes and Foxes bring up
Yeah.
a good point, that time may have been all over the place, that maybe time wasn't stable because of the
True.
breaking. We see time get all messed up because of the boar before
True.
in the final battle. So what's to say it wasn't happening with the ceiling?
I know, right? It's like you've got not just the land moving, but like, do you know what? Let's put a pin in the time thing as well.
Yeah.
Let's just say,
Spatial.
all the generations, whatever,
Yeah.
this happened, but who knows what was happening, in terms of objective time, if you can even, use that term in this.
Right. I mean, you've got these male Aes Sedai who certainly have done things like created the ways and explored the portals and messed with time and done all sorts and they could be just going all sorts of crazy and not just breaking worlds, but like, what's the best way to have a continent break itself? Well, you fuck with time and the two continents move at different rates, and then it breaks itself.
Break dimensions. I'm reading this book about time. It's by this physicist. It's in the other room, but I don't want to grab it now. But it's about the concept of time by this physicist, and it's just insane. Talking about how someone who lives a whole life at sea level ages slower than someone who lives in a mountain.
Oh, I've heard this.
You know?
Totally.
And it's
Hey.
subtle.
Because of gravity.
But
Lucky for me.
It's like microseconds.
Not
it's
just
it's
gravity,
hardly.
but
Yeah.
like just the way that our construct of time actually plays out, and it's just insane. I haven't finished it yet because it's a bit of a mind fuck, but yeah, it's like makes your brain go to jello 100%. You're like, what is going on?
Well, it's the whole thing where they have to account for time dilation with the GPS satellites
Yeah. Must
and,
depend on
like relativity. Because
Yeah.
because they're so high up, they experience different gravity, so they actually move at a different rate through time than we do. So to finish up this vision, is it just all I've got is the secret name, which is the people of the dragon?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which we know is because it was sort of it was a bit of a misnomer. It's because they served all Aes Sedai, and some people were like, oh, but they only serve the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
This sort of like misnomer got passed down through the generations as the secret name of the Aiel.
Yeah, and it's changed in meaning over time.
But if you really wanted to differentiate, I would say Jenn and the people of the dragon.
Yes.
Because the people of the dragon are the people who fight for the dragon, whereas the Jenn do not.
Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It evolved over time. It's almost like what we were kind of saying before about the splits needing to happen, is that they became a warrior culture because that's what was needed in the Third Age. And that's why they are the people of the dragon. And that's why when they go through these visions, they get marked as, like physically marked as the people of the dragon.
And the Tinkers certainly aren't the people of the dragon.
No.
No.
Even though
they've kept the way of the leaf.
That's right,
more
yeah.
closely.
Exactly.
So, it's complicated. Timey-wimey stuff.
I like how Aradia's kind of bringing it back around that, you know, they went from the way of the leaf, splintered and like, I feel like the largest faction is this extremely violent faction of the Aiel. But after the last battle, and even before it, Rand starts using them to enforce peace.
Yeah.
And that will be their new job after Rand, to make peace.
Poetic.
So I'm thinking back to Celinda saying to Jonai, like, you must keep to the way of the covenant, like, you must keep it, because she knows that the Aiel people are going to be the salvation, and maybe they've just interpreted it wrong. Maybe it's the Aiel people that needed to survive and go on this journey, and maybe it wasn't necessarily the way of the leaf that needed to survive, it was the way of the leaf that needed to evolve, and so they could be wrong.
I think
Certainly
so.
needed the
yeah.
Aes Sedai interpreting that never happens.
It's like we're all human, guys. We might live for 300 years, but they're still human. So,
I went to college in the White Tower. I know better than you.
You're interpreting the visions through her interpretation of the visions. So it's like, crud, I have no idea what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And just because we're just about to talk about the Dragon Wall and crossing it, just wanted to throw out there that, don't know if you guys knew this, there's a real mountain range in South Africa. I'm going to stuff up the name. It's called Ukalamba, which means Barrier of the Spears by the Zulu people. And it's called Drakensberg, meaning Mountains of Dragons in Afrikaans. It actually exists.
Whoa.
Nice.
It is in the eastern part of South Africa, running some 1,000...
RJ must have...
Oh, for sure.
Oh, I've been there.
Oh, Nick's been there.
Yeah, I've been there.
The Zulu spear. I've posted this in Discord so many times I'm not even going to do it. But if you just look at a picture of a traditional Zulu spear, you see this. It's obvious.
No, so you've been to the Dragon Wall?
Yes.
Like years ago, I was in Mossel Bay, and then I just travelled around South Africa for a bit, and I went to Durban, and then out of Durban I was doing like all these trips out, and I went to one of the, like a Zulu village, and I remember having to go up through, I don't know, we had to drive for ages. I'm probably wrong, but just like foggy memory. I have to look it up on the map to see if it was actually within driving distance from Durban. Hang on. The nearest major city to Drakensberg is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, and Durban, and it's only a few hours away. So yeah, been there.
There you go. You heard it first, folks. So yeah,
How
anyway.
was the waste?
Yeah.
They had guns.
Oh, so this is the future vision that you're seeing through the after Avienda.
Yeah, we pulled up to the village. We've been driving for ages. It was super dodge, but the way, like, I just basically jumped in this local's car and just went.
You're brave.
Yeah, but it was so cool. It was a really, really cool experience. I remember just pulling up into the village, and there was just all these people standing outside with these massive guns, and I mean, yeah, it was quite confronting. And then
it would have been.
yeah, it wasn't army or it wasn't police or anyone. It was just, yeah, it was weird.
It was on a border, I think.
Yeah.
So probably explains the military presence, but yeah. So I just found that totally randomly through my login screen through Windows 10 a few months ago. It was like, did you know about the Dragon Wall? And I was like, tell me more about the Dragon Wall. What? Really? So it exists. How cool is that?
Tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So in the next vision, they are in the waste.
Final vision.
The final vision. Da, da, da,
So
da, da.
the Aes Sedai advisor, before we leave the second last one, must have had the foretelling or be a dreamer, because there's something about foretelling the future glory of Cairhien here as like topless towels and all of that. So there's more, just more of that.
She says we
reference
must
to
leave
dreaming.
these hills and move east. She says the dry rivers will run again, and we will build a great city beside one. She says many things.
Yeah,
That's a foretelling, if I ever heard one.
exactly. That's what I thought too. Are we going to cross the Dragon Wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
We're at Rhuidean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rhuidean is being built. Well, it's half built.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. They do continue to build it up a little bit, but they don't, not for much longer, I don't think.
Well, we know Maiden is 40 years old. He is the great-great-grandson of Roderick. So we've crossed 4 generations.
I've put five generations. I initially put 6, but I think I got it wrong. I think it's 5.
I counted 4.
5 generations since what's his name left in the wagons?
So we hear about someone that we don't see through the eyes of.
No, because he mentions further down about where is it? This is how it was confusing, and it was like someone's great grandson, and then that person's great grandson.
Yeah, it is confusing.
And then I kind of had to read it back from that because he was. I can't even remember. Oh, here, or maybe even when Comran's great father Roderick led the Aiel. I'm probably wrong. It probably is 4. Could they remember when his great father Comran first found Odious steading in the Dragon Wall and began to trade with them, or maybe even when Comran's great father Roderick led the Aiel to kill the men in the iron shirts? So count it backwards. Okay, maybe it is 4. I think great father, great grandfather is where I was getting confused with.
Maybe it is 5. Anyway, quite a long time.
I feel like this is the debate over whether there are 5 or 6 stories in the building with the Bowl of the Winds. It doesn't really matter either way.
Yeah,
It's not gonna help you.
exactly. We'll get there anyway. In any case, it's about maybe 100 years, 80 to 100 years later, so further into our time.
And then Rhuidean's founded, and Rhuidean's there for what, like 2,000 years before Rand? Mm-hmm. So there is a large gap between the founding of Rhuidean and modern day that we don't see any visions of.
No.
Where we essentially have the modern Aiel people existing in the waste, somewhat unchanging, and I think that might have to do with the fact that they are given these visions, and that kind of locks their culture in place.
True. I counted about 2,500 years from this first vision to the present. Whoa.
Wow.
For quite a long time.
Yeah, that's most of history.
Yeah. I think we were saying 300 the other day, but that doesn't seem right. I think we see about 500 years of history from the oldest vision in Age of Legends to this first one. It's about 500 years, which places about
right.
2,500 years from this first vision here, the newest one, to the present day Third Age Aiel. There's got to be some flexibility there, but as a...
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
Generations aren't an exact measurement.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
It's a long time, and I like that idea that because from this point onwards, they're kind of locked into that idea of what the Aiel should be.
Because you have all of their leaders and all of their wise ones going through the crystal Ter'angreal and basically being told this is why we don't use swords. And they base all of their culture and all of their actions on essentially a failure and trying to make up for it.
Yeah.
I think what makes this vision very interesting is that some of the last surviving Jenn have gathered together their protectors, or the Tent Aiel, or whatever we want to call them, and are saying basically, Maiden asks, who's the Aielman that we're introduced to, why have you brought us all here? Why have you called us here? Demanded, though it burned his tongue to admit being summoned, which I thought was kind of interesting. And instead of answering, the man who is standing in between the two women says, "Why do you not carry a sword?" And Maiden simply says, "It's forbidden." And this is kind of just all demonstrating that he just doesn't know. These Aiel don't know anymore. Even their leaders.
It doesn't take long to forget.
Yeah.
Why you do something. It always reminds me of the story of the 5 monkeys and the banana on a ladder.
What? You might need to explain that one.
Yeah. So the story is, there's a banana up on a ladder, and anytime any of the monkeys try and climb the ladder to get the banana, they're sprayed down with water. And so eventually they all learn not to climb the ladder and get the banana. And one by one, they replace the monkeys in the room. And anytime the new monkey tries to go get the banana, all the other monkeys beat him up because they don't want to get sprayed with water.
I've had this before, actually.
Yeah, and so eventually there are 5 new monkeys, none of which who have ever been sprayed with water, but they will beat up any monkey who tries to get the banana up on the ladder.
Good old experiments on animals in the 1970s, hey?
And so and so this is where traditions come from, is where like you do this thing but you don't know why you do it.
Yeah.
And there's a similar thing. I remember hearing another story about cooking the turkey roast, and a woman was like, "So as part of the recipe, you cut the end off the roast," and her kids were like, "Well, why do you do that?" And she's like, "Well, that's the way my mom did it." And she's like, "Well, okay. I assume it makes the roast better somehow." So she went to her mom and she said, "Mom, why do you do this?" And the mom said, I don't know. My mom always did it that way." And her grandmother was still alive, so she went to her grandmother and she said, "Grandmother, why do you always do it that way?" And she's like, "Well, my oven was small, so I couldn't fit the whole roast in there. So I cut the butt off so it would fit."
Isn't the butt like the best bit?
And it's like the best part. Yeah, totally. It's like you're just totally losing, And so there's sometimes you need to ask why. You need. My whole point is that you need to understand why you're doing these traditions. You can't just blindly follow them.
Yeah.
And that's what the Aiel are giving, or the Aes Sedai are giving the Aiel, is an understanding of why these traditions exist. Don't follow them blindly.
It's a very significant gift when you put it that way. We imagine being able to see your own family history going back 500 years or longer, understanding why
2,500 years.
2,500 years, yeah, that's right. So
crazy.
It's crazy stuff.
Insane.
And why I love these chapters so much. You get so many little, just the first read through, I was like, oh, what is this? They had, anyway.
500 years. That's
very, very exciting.
That's pre-Roman.
It's a long time.
And part of why I want to spend so long on these chapters is I really do think they are some of the best writing I have ever read in my life.
Great.
And I'm so happy I had you guys on here with me, because I think you contributed a lot and really helped me with a lot of insights on this stuff. So as we approach the end, I'm getting sad. I'm getting really sad about the end of these chapters.
We did not go as long or as far as I thought we were going to take this, which is good. We're going to keep this second episode to around 2 hours. That's fine.
5-hour journey. Where were we?
We see Maiden and talking to Derman. Now, who is Derman? Oh, the last of the Jenn Aiel?
Jenn, yeah.
Yeah, one of the Jenn. who's with the IA.
And the two women are Aes Sedai? Am I getting that right?
No, the two
just
women
also-
are sisters who are Jenn.
Oh, okay.
No, they're not. The Aes Sedai are, they're the Palanquins.
Yeah, it's tricky because there are two Aes Sedai and then there are two Jenn sisters.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And it's very it's like I actually had to read that section a couple of times to puzzle that one out.
So Mordain and Nerissa are
The Jenn.
Jenn.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Jenn. Yeah.
Which is why we don't actually get the names of the two Aes Sedai who were in the Palanquins here. They don't... Yeah, I had to read that a couple of times as well to get that.
And I agree with Aradia that the Jenn sisters are probably dreamers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
wise ones.
Yes, totally. And I thought it was interesting just to talk about physically where they are. This definitely isn't the first time that the Camp Aiel have heard of Rhuidean. They clearly know of it, but it appears to be the first time that they're kind of seeing it up close, and they have been avoiding it. And he comments that a Vendosaur is only 3 spans high, which is huge to him.
It's always been
Mandarin.
cutting.
Yeah, and they just don't see trees in the waste.
Yeah.
But so it's 100 feet tall. When Random Matt entered, it was a lot bigger. So at this point in time, in this vision, it mustn't have been planted all that long ago.
Yeah,
Kind of-
it's about 2,500 years bigger. when
Well,
Rand
yes,
sees
Yeah.
it.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Approximately.
But more so to say that Rhuidean hasn't been founded for very long either. So
No.
yeah.
Everything is newly constructed. Most of it's not even done. Like, it's going from 9 feet to 100 feet, basically.
And there's water in the fountains as well.
Yes.
Which is significant.
Well, they have machines that are working.
Is it a span 2 paces? Sorry
Yeah.
to derail. I
No,
think a
it's
span
okay.
is 2 paces, and a pace is 3 feet?
I didn't
Is that
bother
right?
with the
I
maths,
just want to
but
know
yeah.
in my head. Something like that. So it's like kind of a small tree. Somewhere between 15 and 20 feet compared to when Rand sees it. It's
I
100.
always think of a pace is 3 feet. Because, when I take
Yeah.
a step, that's 3 feet.
Approximately one average human. Okay. Anyway, sorry to derail.
Trees get bigger. Let's put it that way.
I got like a lot bigger.
Yeah, like a lot bigger. I mean, because there's a point where Matt jumps up and can't even touch the bottom branches.
Yeah.
And he's 9 feet tall.
9 feet tall?
Yeah,
He's not that tall.
totally. No, 9. I'm going with 9. I said it and I'm sticking with it because it's not the end of the night and we're not punchy at all.
Okay. He's like Ogier height. Today I learned Matt's an Ogier. Okay, whatever. Or baby Ogier, maybe.
Well, I mean, don't you know Murdral are 9 feet tall and eyes that shoot out lightning and
Rand is only 6'5", only.
Yeah.
Oh my-
He's shortest of
yeah,
the 3.
right.
Because, remember, the Aiel Maiden, who he dates for a little while, makes fun of how short he is. Because he's shorter than she is.
right.
Mm.
Well, no, that's Matt.
Yeah, Matt, yeah.
Matt's like 5'8".
Is he?
Yeah, I
5'10".
thought
He's
they were-
5'10".
I figured he was just 6 with boots on.
Yeah.
Go with boots on, yeah. With risers.
Yeah.
I was going to say I'm 6 feet tall in some boots.
Hey, I'm 9 feet tall in stilts.
You could call that a boot.
It's a really cool boot with a high heel, a 3-foot heel.
How do you get around walking in that? Must be difficult to get around. How do you climb stairs in that?
One flight at a time.
Probably don't need to, actually. Why would
Yeah,
you need to?
you're just already on the 2nd floor.
Uh-huh.
So
So,
let's talk about this
yeah.
prophecy.
yeah. So Mandan is initially really contemptuous of the Jenn, but it started the other way around, with the Jenn refusing to acknowledge the existence of the new Aiel as warriors and their protectors. We mentioned that before, but it's important here because he comes up and it's all like, I don't want to do this. And his wife is like, you have to. Call by dreams.
You have to, or you'll die and we'll all die. That's basically your whole sept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Jenn dreamers must have touched their dreams, or maybe it was the ancient Aes Sedai who touched their dreams and made them, and put about this dream prophecy with all of the tent Aiel dreamers that they had to be here. So, and we also see the first reference to the piece of Rhuidean. It says that you cannot kill in front of a Jenn, although they still don't really get why.
It's shameful to kill in front of
It's
a
very shameful. It's almost as shameful to kill a Jenn as it is to kill in front of a Jenn.
Which kind of turns into the piece of Rhuidean later.
Yeah.
After the Jenn are gone. Still nobody kills there. And did anyone read yet? We're just at this part when Dermot says, "Whoever would lead among you must come to Rhuidean and learn where we came from and why you do not carry swords. Who cannot learn will not live."
And we get to see someone tearing his eyes out who will not live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he doesn't emerge. His body isn't like falling out of the end. He just vanishes.
Yeah.
He just doesn't come out of the last
I
vision.
noticed Rand doesn't see. He's just gone.
Someone said yesterday that maybe that's where the Finn step in and take the bodies of the men who don't make it. It's kind of creepy. I don't believe that, actually, but that was something that was mentioned.
I could see them accepting that deal. Like, sure, we'll teach you all this stuff if, approximately only 1 out of 3 actually succeeds and we get to eat the other 2.
Yeah, it's the
Or
price,
whatever
maybe.
it is that they do.
Actually, if you talk about the glass columns being a gift from the Finn, perhaps the price is 1/3 of the Aiel who go through. And then I don't know. That's kind of a tangent. I don't really know.
Yeah.
that
I was always thinking it was just the Aiel that couldn't handle
Yeah,
the
he couldn't accept
history.
it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where we see the bleakness that overtakes the Aiel, because those are also the Aiel, a certain portion of them cannot handle the truth. It runs fundamentally contrary to what they think they are.
Absolutely.
They have betrayed what they used to be to become what they find honorable, and resolving it is almost impossible in their heads. And that's where you end up with a guy Shine that never put off the white.
Mm-hmm.
You end up with the brotherless. You end up with the Shido. All those are Aiel handling this terrible truth in different ways.
Do you want to read the prophecy?
A man named Cherendine
Yeah.
says, "So what you're saying is whichever of us comes to Rhuidean and to you will lead the Aiel?" No. The word came thin as a whisper, but strong enough to fill every ear. I think it's this part, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. It came from the dark-eyed Aes Sedai, sitting in her carved chair, with a blanket across her legs as if she felt cold under the broiling sun. "That one will come later," she said. The stone that never falls will fall to announce his coming. Of the blood, but not raised by the blood, he will come from Rhuidean at dawn, and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back, and he will destroy you.
And that prophecy is what drives the Aiel for pretty much most of the books.
The next 2 millennia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stone that will fall. Like, they know that once the stone falls, that's probably going to announce his coming, but they don't know that the person who takes the stone is that person, which is why they're still skeptical of Rand for a while. Of the blood not raised by the blood is, of course, of the Aiel blood raised by Manetheren blood.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from Rhuidean at dawn, he who comes with the dawn, that's where that comes from. Tie you together with bonds you cannot break, that's where he takes all the clans and shoves them together into one people.
And the bonds just being knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he will take you back, well, that's back to the wetlands, and he will destroy you.
Also, he will take you back because he tells them about all this history, right?
Right. Take you back to history.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that.
But yeah, physically and in memory.
And so any of the Aiel that survived up to this point who don't show up at this meeting and don't follow this way are destroyed. They just, not by any deliberate act, they just fall to time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a lot about these Aes Sedai already. So, like I sort of thought before, they are clearly ageless, so they must have had the Oath Rod.
Yes.
My headcanon, like I mentioned, is that they are Aes Sedai from the Breaking, and the ones arguing about the foretelling of the Eye of the World. So Dandre, who had the original foretelling, was dark-eyed, and a point is made of that here. So there's nothing to say necessarily. I mean, it's stretching it. So feel free
I
to
really want that to be true.
pull it apart.
I do too.
Yeah.
But
the
that-
woman with the blanket on her lap, the ancient Aes
that's
Sedai,
right.
it's just perfect.
That
She-
She's in the
lived-
desert and she has a blanket on her lap.
Yeah, so she lived, she was part of the original White Tower, she took the Oath Rod, and now she's here. And then she probably dies very shortly afterwards.
And I think she's the one with basically all the prophecies who creates most of the... she basically is controlling the Aiel fate.
Yeah.
I would like that a lot. If she was the one that she told them to run and save as many of you as you can and as much of your culture as you can, and finally, in the end here, or the end of this sequence, she is there saying, now that you've forgotten, you have to do this thing so that, because the Jenn are almost gone, she says, a day will come when the Jenn are no more, and only you will remain to remember the Aiel. You must remain, or all is for nothing and lost.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stay here and wait.
And I like when Dermot says, for long years we searched for this place, and now we prepare it, if not for the purpose we once thought.
I had a lot of questions about that.
It's not about the Aiel. Yeah, well, I thought this is when they realised it's not about the Ter'angreal. It's about the people. It's about the memories.
Their whole purpose for all these years was to find a safe place to keep the Ter'angreal and wait for the Aes Sedai to return. And it's only just now they're figuring out that actually wasn't it.
No.
That's not the case.
Thoughts?
I like
and
it a lot.
It just has nothing to do with the Aes Sedai. It's just all about preserving the people, doing anything they can to keep the blood alive in some form or another so that Rand can be born. Like in the very beginning of, or I should say in the very beginning of, since we've gone through this in chronological order, but I guess at the end of the sequence, sort of, you know what I mean. One of the two Aes Sedai are arguing at one point when the one who takes the wagons away, whatever.
Jonai.
The one they task with taking the wagons.
Yes, Jonai.
Walks in and he just like quietly sits and waits for the Aes Sedai to finish talking. The two are yelling at each other, and one's saying, like, she says, yelling something like, "What good are all your foretellings if we don't know like the where, when, and how or whatever?" And she's like, "This is too important to bet on, these vagaries. It's the wheel itself is what we're protecting."
Totally, yeah. And there's something about not being able to see far enough into the future as well. You might have just mentioned that. The one who's yelling, I propose, is not the Aes Sedai who's here. The Aes Sedai who's here is the one who's like calmly saying, it is what it is. Kind of Moraine-like. The wheel weaves, the wheel. I can only see what I see.
So we think this is Deandre, and she's the one that had the visions initially?
That's what I think.
That's what we want to think.
That's what I want to think.
I'm going back to that place.
Yeah.
What good is your foretelling, Osel was almost shouting, if you cannot tell us when? Her long black hair swayed as she shook with anger. So that's Osella.
Yeah.
Long black hair. The world rests on this, the future, the wheel itself. Dark-eyed Deandra, so make a point of the dark-eyed, faced her with a more usual calm. I am not the creator. I can only tell you what I foretell.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
See, I thought
Deandra's the dark-eyed one.
Yeah, I thought she was one of the Aes Sedai that was involved in creating the Eye of the World.
Involved in it doesn't mean to say that she was the one who actually did it.
Yeah.
It says that she
had the foretelling, but doesn't mean she actually was there doing it.
Yeah, that's right. So you might get a lot of comments back on that one in Discord in theories after this, but yeah.
No, I'm totally buying in. The dark-eyed ancient Aes Sedai in this vision is totally Deandra who had the vision. So
Done.
All those visions, all that stuff that talks about the sword, the stone, the eye, and even here, everything that she's foretelling is all about Rand, and it's the same Aes Sedai.
Headcanoned. And it's just so perfect that she shows up later to be like, well, let's tie up these loose ends.
Definitely.
And it makes a nice little circle.
No, it's totally her. It's totally her. Guys, that was such a great catch.
Ah, thanks. Just, months of reading, just being good. But we've got a radio on board, so that's pretty good. I like that. Vote of confidence as well. So, yeah, we talked about that to death now, but, so, there it is. And they say clan chiefs at first, but not also wise ones. I kind of was wondering, at what point the wise ones begin to go to Rhuidean, because it doesn't seem to be from the very beginning. But
good question.
I mean,
although
they just say the leaders among you, so
wise ones go to Rhuidean twice.
they go twice.
Right. They go through the columns and the rings.
Well, again, there's 2,500 years of history that we
Of
don't
course.
get.
Yeah.
They make a point of saying that the wise ones who go through the columns have a much better survival rate as well.
And I don't know if they either chalk that up to women being stronger or having already been tested once.
Yeah, think a bit of both.
I always thought, like, yeah, these young women get to go through training with the wise ones for quite a while. Like, if you can survive that and the first test, if you can call it a test,
Yeah.
like I feel like you're a little bit better off. Whereas with men, they're just like, oh, you think you can do it? Well, go try.
It's generally better prepared. They've got like months of actual training before they go in and all of that, so that's part of it too. But I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
I think so. And, you can't go throwing away wise ones like you could clan chiefs. There's only so many channelers.
True.
Well, but wise ones don't necessarily have to be channelers.
That's true.
No, that's true as well. So maybe we didn't really talk about the days of the Jenn dwindling as a part of the... to me, it had the feeling of a dream prophecy.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, like they knew that they were coming to an end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, again, is why I think they find out that the last surviving Jenn is going to be Nakomi, and she preserves their culture up to that point to be there for Rand at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they need to go away for that to happen.
Yeah, I think someone said in the chat before about that theory, I think it was Trav, so the Jenn built Rhuidean thinking they could be safe there, but they couldn't. And despite having water for a time, they couldn't keep the pumps running, and the soil in the waste was no good for farming. The last of the Jenn Aiel left the waste, and left the Aiel that abandoned the way to continue travelling and searching for the Song of Peace, the place they could be safe and where the pacifism could prosper. So you're sort of insinuating that the Jenn we see here end up rejoining with the Tinkers?
Or just traveling on their own.
Or on their own.
Yeah.
As like a completely separate,
Right.
tiny people.
And continuing to die out until maybe the last one was this old woman named Nakomi.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
that over time, there were fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer until only, this one last woman who had the prophecies of her people saying you need to be there at the last battle for X, Y, and Z reasons.
It would be perfect, wouldn't it be, if one of the Jenn was left to be there at the last battle, to have carried this whole thing out from the beginning.
It's a long time.
It is, but I think it's all tied to this Diandre's. But I think she's a hugely important person in the entire history of the Aiel,
Definitely.
all the way up to current Rand.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
God,
also,
how did he write this?
his brain
I
was
ask myself
massive.
that all the time. We've gone through all the visions. We've seen the journey of the Aiel people from pacifists to warriors.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That
We've
makes sense.
made a few discoveries along the way, and now we're coming out of the visions. And let's see Rand cut Matt down from a tree. But yeah, I think it's time to move on to the end of chapter 26, and we're actually back into linear time at this point. So we're going to move forward one chapter per chapter.
Rand must be feeling so messed up right now in his head, though, right? Like, just after all of that.
Not as messed up as Matt.
Well,
who
no.
got a whole ton of memories. He says they're like needles in his head.
So if they've been in there for 7 days, who's been giving them water?
7 days in the real world, but they probably only experienced a few hours.
That's what I would think.
And Rand was in other people's bodies the whole time, so
Yeah, but
that doesn't really count. And maybe Matt was hanging from a tree for all 7 days.
Yeah.
well, that's the other thing. Was he just conveniently just hung as Rand's coming out of the columns, or is he just? I don't know.
Talked about this a little
How long
yesterday.
has
That's
he been there
something
for?
that has
Yeah.
kept me up at night. See, in all seriousness, like, did Matt
he
just
die?
get hung? Or did he die, and then when Rand cut him down, he brought him back?
I like the idea that he was hung for like 6 to 7 minutes, right? Because that's how long it takes for to be without oxygen, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
He almost dies, and I don't think
yeah.
Rand channels.
His heart
No,
stopped.
he
No, he doesn't. Sorry. We'll let you do the read, and we'll kind of come to the points as they come up. But yeah.
He does some weird heaving thing, and I
Yeah.
don't understand what that is.
Oh yeah.
Like,
It's like reverse CPR.
Yeah.
Instead of putting pressure down on the chest, you're slamming the back against the ground, and that's what's compressing the heart. So I think it's just chest compressions backwards.
But he starts compressing the chest, and then he changes over to grabbing him by his pants.
He's like waist up.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? If he's grabbing him by his pants, he's probably hitting him in the solar plexus, which means he's probably more, not CPR, but Heimlich maneuver. Because he is emulating someone who was drowning.
Yeah.
Yes, they make a point of that.
Would not help someone who was strangled.
Well,
so
I thought that
good
would help
job.
with the breathing. It would like force the air to come to
Oh,
go
that he's,
in,
like,
but he's still doing
pushing-
the breaths as well. So it's
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the point is, he's trying to get his heart to beat. So
Yeah.
Yeah. He's trying to do CPR, but he's a shepherder.
wonder if he ever had to do that on his sheep. Come on, little lamb.
But
Sorry.
even as he's doing that, his mind, he thinks back to the little girl and how
Yes.
the power cannot bring people
Right.
back to
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. No. He uses the power to cut him down, but not to heal
Yeah,
him
not to
Yes.
bring
or
him
even to do the chest compressions. He
No.
could use like weaves of air to save his like muscles,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not even doing that.
Like Rand comes out of the columns. He's like seeing stars and stuff, and he like struggles out of there, has the thought that Maiden isn't there anymore and isn't ever coming out, sees Mat hanging, jumps up, cuts him down with a sword made out of fire, revives him.
I don't know if you guys would agree. This is kind of a random idea, but I kind of thought that. So we see Mat hanging from crosswise Ashendarai from the Tree of Life. I just want to make a point that we know that this isn't the death that kills him, because we know from the last battle in A Memory of Light that he has a conversation with Hawkwing, and Mat says, "I did die. Apparently that tree claimed me." And Hawkwing says, "Not the tree, gambler. Another moment. One that you cannot remember. It is fitting, as Lews Therin saved your life both times."
It's not a true death.
No. And, he's hanging from the Tree of Life, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Maybe that's why he's able to hang there for 7 days.
Yeah.
It's the Tree of Life.
And do you want to talk about...
About the links to Odin hanging from the Tree of Wisdom, and he says something about thought and memory, which I'm pretty sure is the name of Odin's ravens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the poem that's written on the Ashendarai.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Thought is the arrow of time, memory never fades. Just on a side note, when we're talking about Norse mythology, Rollo is my 35th great-grandfather in a direct line. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Got royalty here. Who's also been to the Dragon Wall. So, what do you think of that?
Are we sure we don't... Were you born on the Dragon Wall? Do you happen to... Are we in I mean, sometimes the dragon is female, right?
True.
Some-
You're the alternate soul,
I
right?
could be.
I'm shipping those. Have you seen us? You saw that photo. We're basically Aiel. Like, height, colouring, all of that. So...
Is Perth the Two Rivers this time?
I'm like an Aiel that ate McDonald's.
It
First discovered McDonald's.
it feels like the Two Rivers sometimes, trust me.
I mean, honestly, if you take the Australian coast, flip it upside down, it matches up pretty well with Randland coast.
Well, I've worked for the last 4 or so years, 5 years in the Pilbara, and the Aiel waste is the Pilbara.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, it definitely has allegories to, I want to say, Nevada and those deserts in the West, in the US.
Sure.
But, yeah, if you ever see the Pilbara, it is completely
It is
barren.
the Aiel waste.
There's, like, nothing.
There's no trees. There's shrubs. There's no trees.
There's iron ore,
It doesn't rain.
but very little water.
It's red dirt.
Yeah.
It's dusty.
It's kind of beautiful in its own way.
I'm looking at pictures. It is kind of beautiful in a weird way.
It's very stark. And everything really does want to kill you there.
It's flat, and then you get like a big gorge or something.
Yeah. Oh, guys, total tangent, but if you ever come to WA and you're into hiking, which I know you are, you have to do 2 things. Speaking of the Pilbara, the Bibbulmun track down south.
So my mum made a documentary on the Bib track.
And there's this beautiful gorge in the Pilbara as well, which for the light forsake me, I cannot get the name of it right now. But yeah, absolutely stunning. I'll post it.
Is there enough natural water to spend
just, like,
a long time out
hikes
there?
For days. in these beautiful.
It's
used
hot
to be
though.
very hot, and it used to be all ocean, but not anymore.
Oh, weird. One day I'll hike all the hikes.
Oh, yeah, just want to note that he checks out the Ch25 keys once more and then leaves them there. Not yet, not for a long time yet, if he was lucky. I was wondering what he was thinking he was going to use them for.
So did Lanfear tell him what they are?
No, he figured it out on his own from the books, didn't he?
Oh, okay. Yep. Because I had a question there.
But here he's saying Rand kept his pace to Matt's, which was slow at first, hobbling along using the odd spear as a walking staff. So this is as they're walking out, they pass by the figurines again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After the poem.
Matt said the same thing that Rand said when I think they left Shada Logoth. What?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Bloody Eshes. bloody Eshes. I can run.
Yeah,
Sorry. Got accented hard just then.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, didn't I figure that one out, like,
You did.
back in that paragraph? I was like, oh, I think I remember this. And then, like, I looked it up and stuff. Yeah, I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
I was going to bring it up again
totally.
if you didn't, so.
Yeah. No, I only got that because you mentioned that then, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm smart, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all smart. I mean, come on.
All right,
sound
come
that
on. No,
convinced.
we're great. You sound a little skeptical there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess,
Sure.
if you say so.
Whatever you want. When they left the square behind, the unfinished palaces rearing along the street had a threatening look, their jagged tops like the walls of great fortresses. Rand embraced Saidin, though he saw no real threat. He felt it, as though murderous eyes were boring into his back. Rhuidean lay peaceful and empty, shadowless in the blue glow of its fog roof. The dust in the streets rippled in the wind. The wind. There was no wind. Oh, burn me, Matt said. I think we're in trouble, Rand. It's what I get for staying around you. You always get me in trouble. The ripples came faster, sliding together to make thicker lines, quivering still. Can you walk faster? Rand asked. Walk? Blood and ashes, I can run. Slanting the spear across his chest, Matt suited his words with a lurching gallop. Running alongside, Rand brought his sword back, uncertain of what he could do with it against shivering lines of dust. Uncertain that there really was need. It was only dust. No, it bloody isn't. It's one of those bubbles. The Dark One's evil, drifting along the pattern, seeking out bloody Ta'Veren. I know it is. All around them, dust rippled and shivered ever thicker, bunching and gathering. Suddenly, right in front of them, a shape reared up in the basin of a dry fountain, a solid man shape, dark and featureless, with fingers like sharp claws. Silently, it leapt at them. Rand moved instinctively. The moon rises over water, and the blade of power sliced through the dark figure. In a twinkling, it was only a thick cloud of dust, drifting toward the pavement. Others replaced it, though, black, faceless shapes rushing in from all sides, no two alike, but all with reaching claws. Rand danced the forms among them, blade weaving intricate patterns in the air, leaving floating motes behind. Matt used his spear like a quarterstaff, a spinning blur, but bringing the sword blade into it, as if he had always used the weapon. The creatures died, or at least returned to dust, but they were many, and quick. Blood poured down Rand's face, and the old wound in his side burned on the point of splitting open. Red spread across Matt's face, too, and down his chest. Too many. Too quick.
I just want to point out that he's dealing with another bubble of evil, and once again, his side is opening up.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You do not do the 10th part of what you are capable of already. That was what Lanfear had told him. He laughed as he danced the forms. Learn from one of the Forsaken. He could do that, if not the way she intended. Yes, he could. He channeled, wove strands of the power, and sent a whirlwind in the middle of each black shape. They exploded in clouds of dust that left him coughing. As far as he could see, dust settled from the air. Hacking and panting, Matt leaned on his dark-shafted spear. Did you do that? He wheezed, wiping blood away from his eyes. About time. If you knew how, why didn't you bloody do it in the first place? Rand started to laugh again. Because I didn't think of it. Because I didn't know I could. Because I didn't know how until I did it. But it froze in his mouth. Dust drifted out of the air, and as it settled on the ground, it began to ripple. Run, he said. We have to get out of here. Run! Side by side they sped for the fog, slashing at any lines of dust that seemed to be thickening, kicking at them, anything to keep them from coalescing. Rand set whirlwinds swirling wildly in every direction. Dispelled dust began shivering back together immediately. Even before it reached the ground now, they kept running, into the fog and through, bursting out into the dim, sharp-shadowed light. Side aching, Rand spun, ready to try lightning or fire, anything. Nothing came through the fog after them. Maybe the mist was a wall to those dark shapes. Maybe it held them in. Maybe he didn't know. He didn't really care, so long as those things could not follow. "Burn me," Matt muttered hoarsely. "We were in there all night. It's nearly sunrise. I didn't think it was that long." Rand stared at the sky. The sun had not topped the mountains yet. A painfully brilliant nimbus outlined the jagged peaks. Long shadows covered the valley floor. "He will come from Rhuidean at dawn, and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back, and he will destroy you. Let's go back up the mountain," he said quietly. "They will be waiting for us. For me."
I think the mist enshrouding Rhuidean is a construct, like kind of like what we were saying the other day, of those ancient Aes Sedai. So I do think that that's what stopped the Dust Devils following them through.
I also think bubbles of evil follow very weird rules, including being random mass boundaries for no reason whatsoever, other than the bubble of evil.
That does seem to be a real thing, now that you pointed out, yeah.
But yeah, other than that, dawn on the 7th day.
That's a significant thing in, like, the Bible.
Well, yeah. Yeah. More religious allegories, I mean, come on.
Oh, okay, yeah. Is Rand Jesus?
But better, more interesting Jesus.
I prefer, well, can I say that? I prefer this to the other book.
Oh god, yeah, I just said that out loud. I feel like a really good start is me and Jules. Last year we did this, and we're going to do it this year again. Spent all January just totally dry. We didn't drink a drop, and we just did yoga together and read together and found other things to do other than drink fancy cocktails.
I remember that month. It sucked for me.
You're just bored.
I was just like, come on, let's go for a beer. And you're like, no, man, I can't. I'm like, fuck. Fine.
You can sit there with a fancy soda water, like a mocktail, and pretend. I've done that before.
But that should make a really big difference. And also smoking. I have designs on using that as my slingshot into quitting smoking. If I'm spending a month not drinking, that will make it a lot easier to not smoke. And I mean, I've never not smoked, and I've
absolutely, you need that lung capacity, right? I know there's some runners who are able to do both, but
I've been a runner for quite a really long time, and I always smoked, but I'm not very fast. I'm not a great runner. I just was able to get to a 10-minute mile and just stick to it. I could just keep doing that. So I've run halves before as a smoker. But I'm getting older, and that doesn't help anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to do, though. Do a loyal. Yeah, totally. And I think, definitely quitting the smokes will help you with that, I reckon. It's a good motivation.
I feel like it's more of an Aiel, really.
Yeah, all those Aiel smoke. WTF.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
It's like a one-off.
Well, they don't smoke as heavily as I do, but they do smoke. Cigarettes. Well, pipes.
Pipes, yeah.
I guess.
I feel like it's a very different thing.
Yeah, I've never, confession over here, I haven't really, I haven't smoked a pipe before. I couldn't tell you the difference. Cigarettes, yes.
Oh, totally different.
Pipes, no. So, take your word on that one, but yeah, I feel like they're very different. cigars once. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
One's more
Never again.
recreational. I feel like being a cigarette smoker is kind of like putting on really tight shoes so that you can have the relief of taking them off later. Whereas pot at least is like it's a means to an end. You get high, it's fun, or sleepy, which is also nice.
The thing with a pipe is the pipe is all about the smell. And so what you do is you draw the smoke into your mouth, but you don't never inhale pipe smoke into your lungs.
It's like pure
so it's
tobacco.
like bum puffing.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And then you just get the smell. And for me, at least, when I've smoked a pipe, it's all about keeping the bugs away. So you can stand outside and basically you're like pulling smoke into your mouth and like blowing it at the mosquitoes.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Or you could just have a candle, but, either way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, same thing, right? I mean, essentially, I find the
satisfying.
smell of pipe smoke less offensive than citronella.
And I guess that explains why it became a thing, right, in the South and things. I just imagine old RJ on his porch with his pipe and the mosquitoes. And
Oh, yeah. South Carolina is infested with 727 size mosquitoes. They're huge.
That's also just tobacco country. So much tobacco is produced there.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very cheap in those states.
it was the last place to make it illegal to smoke in a bar in the U.S.
we're going to Sri Lanka, me and my warder, end of next week, actually. And I haven't been to Southeast Asia before, and we had to get all of these top-ups and all these other inoculations before we went. Had about 6 needles. Talking like Hep B, Hep C, diphtheria.
Polio.
No, I think I was okay for polio, actually. All these ones, and I'm just like, ugh. And he's also like, you're only really halfway protected for, like, Japanese encephalitis, so, be careful with mosquitoes. And I was like, thanks, doc. Like, Jesus. All right. I wasn't planning on, like, deliberately getting bitten by mosquitoes, but okay.
Great. By the way, this only sort of works, so good luck.
Yeah.
Get a mosquito net at night, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That all the places we're staying at come with that, obviously, as part of the accommodation. But
I got destroyed by mosquitoes when I was working in the Seychelles, and I had a mosquito net for nighttime as well. There's these little bugs that they call blister bugs, and I'd like wake up in the morning and one has somehow gotten into my mosquito net. And they're called blister bugs because when you squish them, they like leave blisters on your skin. It's full on. But I was supposed to, because prior to that, I was in a malaria area and I was supposed to be taking malaria tablets, and I had to stop because they fucked me up so bad.
really?
Yeah, I was having the craziest dreams and make you really sun sensitive, and so I was covered in blisters from the sun. It
Oh, God.
was the
Yeah.
worst.
It's
Yeah.
the price you pay for going to, exotic places. Exotic for us.
It was
Anyway.
the best trip ever, though, Radio.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I mean, the Seychelles, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
it's basically
Well,
paradise.
fair.
But yeah,
Parandecen, you mean?
yeah, with more water.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?